Everyone. Hello. So great to see everybody here tonight. I'm Carrie Coogan. I'm Deputy Director of the Kansas City Public Library. We're thrilled to have you in person. For those of you who don't know, we're also live streaming most of our events. So if you can't ever make an event or you want to check one out online, please do so. It's very easy. Just go to kclibrary.org. So tonight, our program revolves around a wonderful library exhibition, An Artist at Home in America, Myrtia Mardikes, Photographs of Thomas Hart Benton. It's on display downstairs on our second floor mountain gallery. And most of you who are here probably know that Benton, the famed Kansas City painter, gave Mardikes extraordinary access to his studio and home in 1955. And Mardikes produced nearly 1,100 revealing photos of Benton at work and at leisure. And we were scrolling through some of those in the beginning of the program. Many of them chronicle Benton's work on trading at Westport Landing, a large sweeping mural depicting the beginnings of Kansas City. It was commissioned by the River Club in 1955, and it still hangs there today. I'm sure some of you have probably seen it. Only 4 of Mardikes' photos have ever been published. 32 of them are featured in the library exhibition. And if you haven't already, I would encourage you to drop by the Mountain Gallery on the second floor, either on your way out tonight, we stay open until 9, or you can visit later. The exhibition runs until May 15th. So most of you know that Mike Mardikes passed away late last year. But we take great solace in knowing that he was involved in putting this exhibition together and was able to see its completion and its installation. Very proud to have that happen. Mike's wife, Myrtia Mardikes, Myrtia, which I found out tonight is Greek for myrtle, is here tonight with us, as is his fellow photographer and nephew, Nick Vedros. They're going to be with us tonight to discuss Michael's time with Benton almost 67 years ago. His photos from their sessions offer a rare glimpse into Benton's workplace and his home life. An Artist at Home in America is sponsored by the Richard J. Stern Foundation for the Arts, and we just cannot thank them enough for the support for this exhibit and for supporting the library for many years. I'd also like to thank the Mardikes family and the many people who helped shepherd this project, including my esteemed colleagues in the library's Public Affairs Department, members of the Philanthropy Department who are here tonight, including Margaret Perkins McGinnis and Lauren Park, and as well as our Finance Department. This was truly a team effort. Myrtia and Nick will take questions at the end of the presentation tonight, both from our audience here, and we'd ask you to use the microphone when you ask a question, as well as from our audience watching at home. We're going to be taking questions from the chat. We'll get as many of the questions answered as we can. Again, thank you all so much for coming tonight, and now please join me in welcoming up Myrtia Mardikes and Nick Vedros.
Her name, Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie.
Testing,
1, 2. Testing, 1, 2.
Thank you.
You're good.
Carrie, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate
Great
it.
to have you both.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Great to have you. Mwah.
So the correct pronunciation is Myrtia, a small detail, and my last name is Vedros. Nice to meet you, and thanks for coming. I really appreciate you having us. So Myrt, I'd like to kind of start at the beginning of how this project began. And I was over at your place visiting, and it was during COVID. It was 2020.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I recall it was either August or September.
September, I think it was, yeah.
September. And I was going out the door, and what did you say to me?
I said, Nick, what are we going to do with all those Benton negatives? And you...
I said, how many do you have?
And I said, there's 1,000 in there.
And I was skeptical that there was 1,000, I have to admit. And she says, I'll be right back. And Myrt is one of these people that can find anything. Her memory is better than mine. And she zips into the next room, comes out with a black notebook full of negatives and hands them to me. And off I went. And so inside this notebook, there were not only the negatives, but there were sleeves of CDs where the negatives had been scanned at some point.
Yes.
And what was advantageous about that was that I was able to load those into my computer and I could start a review of what there was. And I counted up how many images there were, and there were only 800 and something images. And I go, oh, Aunt Myrt's wrong. And then after I enlisted Dan White to co-curate this thing, Dan came over numerous times, and finally one of us suggested, why don't we count the negatives? And so we started counting the negatives, and there were 1,080. So more importantly, Myrt was right, and I was wrong.
Sorry.
So what happened next was we realized that we didn't have all the scans. So we said we can't go by the scans. The scans mean nothing now because the missing images could be the best images. So we set those aside, and fortunately, Dan White and I are from negative era. I was trained by Mike Mardikes, and we could look at a negative and analyze whether it was good or bad. We're probably the last generation who's used to looking at negatives for our career. So we went by the negatives. We picked out the top 34 and started editing from there, thinking of how we could tell a story of these. And I kept going back to visit you and Uncle Mike.
Yeah.
Remember with updates?
I know.
And what was that like when
Well, it was, I mean, you came in, I remember, and you had your computer and everything, and you started showing him these negatives. And we were all stunned because he started talking about each one of them, telling you all this information. I mean, he used when he was taking the photographs and everything, and he remembered so much about it.
Yep.
And got a lot of information from him on all those. Yeah.
Fortunately, in our family, we have an audio expert. It's her son, Tom Mardikes. He's at UMKC, and he's been in charge of the chairman of the theater department and teaches sound design. So Tom was able to record all of the interviews because we wanted to get them down so we had the oral history. And then I was calling him out, like, plate 1, tell us about that, and then plate 2, and he would give us a narrative about the images. And I'll go ahead and start rolling through some of the images. Yeah, I wish this had a dissolve on it, but yeah, kudos to Dan White. I want to say something about
Yes.
Dan quickly. We went to college together. Dan actually has a Pulitzer, and he's in the Missouri Photojournalism Hall of Fame. Dan's in California this week and couldn't meet with us. But Dan's responsible for all of the scans, high res, and all of the prints.
Yes. Beautiful.
And of course, thank you to the Richard Stern Foundation. So there's Uncle Mike at age 29 with his camera. And I have something a little bit special for you today that I'm going to pull out at the same time, but I brought that camera for you so you can see it. Everybody loves, the black reveal. This is the camera. So, Myrt, would you hold on to that?
Sure.
Don't drop it.
I won't. I won't.
So if you notice in the frame, it took me a while to see this. There's actually a cord that goes down to a strobe that Mike was bouncing into the ceiling of the Benton room. And Mike is one of the smartest people I ever met. He was literally a Renaissance man, educated in chemistry. He was Google before Google existed. I used to call him up with any question. But Mike has that camera in his hands right there with that strobe that he had from Macy's. And so I wanted to share that with you. And another thing that I would like, I know we're going to have questions at the end, but if there's a particular image where you have a question about, it'd be better if we heard it now, rather than to try to retrace in our mind which image you're talking about.
Good idea.
This was a beautiful negative, and Tom Benton's holding what's called a color test, and he would paint up these color tests quickly. He could get them done in a day or two, just boom, boom, boom. And then he would test out his compositions in small form. And he did a number of these. And I like any picture where Persephone's in the background. It just blows my mind. This one here shows you what the lighting of the room was like when the strobe didn't go off. So notice how this is lacking some shadow detail in here. It's still a great shot because we've got the smoke, the pipe. It's wonderful. It's a great kind of silhouette of Tom Benton. But this shows the technique without the strobe going off. But Mike would shoot basically full frame. We didn't crop really any of these photographs. These are all full frame. That's how good he was. So Mert, what's he holding in his hand there?
Oh, what did they call that? I've forgotten it.
Diminishing glass.
The diminishing glass, right, yeah, right. That's really interesting. I mean, you can look at.
They were popular with muralists of the period. And you could hold it up, and as you can see in this, it'll expand out the image so he doesn't have to get back 30 feet to look at what he's done, but he can stand right there. And that perch, I asked my Uncle Mike, I said, did he store it here or did you put it there? And he goes, oh no, that was his perch. And so he would turn around, light his pipe, and then he'd look at what he was doing. So we were able to ask him a lot of those questions. This is one of our favorites.
Yeah.
After we took on this project, my wife Patty and I, we rented the Ken Burns documentary on Thomas Hart Benton. I thought, well, I better learn something about Benton now, because I'm kind of an idiot. And I couldn't believe it. This picture was in the Ken Burns documentary. And I go, and it's a good thing that we're not litigious. The Mardikes are not litigious. Do we care that it's in there? No, we feel it's an honor that we're in there. They don't need our permission. We're happy to give it because it's about Tom Benton. But this is during whiskey hour at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
5 o'clock, Tom would knock off.
Time to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
So what's great is that this is a self-portrait of Benton, and the face is almost the exact same angle. Very, very smart of Mike to shoot that. And he's holding a pack of matches, we could kind of tell. Not the big kitchen matches that he had previously.
Nick?
Yes.
Tell us about Mike having whiskey with Benton.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nick, because we have people watching at home and we don't have microphones yet out for the mid-program, if you could repeat the questions just so the people watching at home can hear the question and the answer.
Will do. The question was Mike ever offered a glass of whiskey during whiskey hour? And the answer was usually no. But he one time got a glass of whiskey, and Mike quickly did it as a shot. And Tom said, oh no, that's sipping whiskey. You don't get another one of those. And so he got punished. No more whiskey during whiskey hour. Yes? What are these two smaller pieces below here? I'm afraid I have to, Steve?
So the one on the right is a Martha's Vineyard landscape. The Bentons had a summer cottage up on Martha's Vineyard. And the one on the left, it's a picture of two cats, actually, called the Brothers.
So Martha's Vineyard and two cats. This overall is fabulous. We found a type of film that was called Godox. It was a German type of film that we weren't familiar with. And this looked very reticulated. I think I'm going to go a little quicker, and then we will try to do questions and answers toward the end. I have a feeling that'll work better. I can read the room. So these maquettes is how Benton would kind of arrange things and figure out how he was going to do it. And he would position them with the north light that would come in through the window, and then he could view the shadows, see the shadow side, and that would help him link up these with the realism. But I was pretty astounded that he could possibly sculpt these things. And then the question hit me. I asked my Uncle Mike, I said, how long from start to finish after he got the commission on the River Club painting did it take him to finish? And he says, I think it was only 6 months. And once again, I didn't believe my uncle. Remember, I didn't believe my aunt either. And then I asked Steve Sitton, who knows these kind of things, and he said 5 to 6 months. So more importantly, I was wrong again. So this one is shot with the Rolleiflex. That's this camera here. And this is the camera that I always knew my uncle had. It's a 2 1/4 square, 120 format film. And Rita almost always had a cigarette in her hand. So what do you remember about Rita, Mert?
She was just a lot of fun. She really was. And she enjoyed cooking, I mean, everything. And she took care of Tom. She really took care of Tom. Managed, everything for him, yeah.
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 From what I've heard, without her, his career would not have
Yeah.
had the forward motion that it had.
Yeah.
She was tremendous
She was
business
really, really
person.
good at making all the decisions that needed to be made about selling and what was going on, yeah.
Yeah.
She was good, but she was just a very gracious and fun person.
Yeah, and you can see Rita here is kind of doing the negotiating while Tom sits a little bit dormant there. And once again, Persephone, I think at this time, she was trying to sell it for $12,000, I believe. Is that correct? Was it more than that? Steve, what was it?
I don't know. It was 12,000 in 1939.
In 39.
Yeah.
And then I had heard that it was 15,000 at that time. And in the exhibit it said, I think, 12,000. So it was in that range, but they should have bought it because in 1980 something, when the Nelson bought it, it went for $2.5 million. Wow. So you could have picked it up for 15 grand. So that is Tom Benton, painted into the portrait of himself as an older man, leering at this beautiful woman. We wanted a process shot in there so that we showed some of Tom's process. This kind of shows the scale of how big that is, because that's a razor blade, and you can kind of calculate how many inches that is from the razor blade. The River Club would come check in on him and see how he was doing, to see if their money was being spent well. And Tom would have to answer questions. That's the president of the River Club. That's him there looking through the diminishing glass. Probably looking at Tom thinking, why is he so short? That's the president's wife. And I remember I didn't know who she was when we were doing the curating, and I kept telling Dan, I don't think I'd want this woman yelling at me. And here's another portrait that Benton did of himself much earlier. I think that was in Paris? Yes. I have the authority over here. He's really helping me. Thanks, Steve. This was shot outdoors. Tom was kind of putting the finishing touches on this when Uncle Mike was shooting images of this. Of all of the images, this is the one that Mike Mardikes proclaimed was his favorite. It's called Behind Smoke. And here's what I know about it. He said, this was during whiskey hour. He was lighting his pipe. I focused on him, and I shot this at a quarter of one-fourth of a second shutter speed. And he said it was so perfect because the smoke ring kind of went around his eye. And plus he held detail in the fire being lit. And behind smoke was Mike's very favorite of all of them. What about you, Mert?
No, I love it too.
Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, that one, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I like the other one with the painting of he was painting the little boy, you know, the neighbor boy, you know. I think that's a great one, yeah.
Agreed.
Those two are my favorites, yeah.
So this is Alfred Eisenstadt, the famous Life magazine photographer. And if you can't place who he is, think of the sailor kissing the girl in Times Square. That's one of Alfred Eisenstadt's. And believe it or not, this was one of Uncle Mike's icons. He just thought the world of Eisenstadt, and he couldn't believe when he went in the studio that day that he was referred to as Izzy. He says, Izzy, I want you to meet Mike Mardikes. He can shoot your eyes out in every which way. And then I also heard from Uncle Mike, I asked him the second time, and Uncle Mike was quoted as saying, he called Izzy a clown in comparison to Mike Mardikes. And he goes, it made me turn every shade of red. I was so embarrassed that he was saying this about me because that's farthest from the truth.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eisenstadt knew Tom because they both had a summer home.
Yeah.
And there's another one of Eisenstadt. So this was a key individual for Uncle Mike to meet because Eisenstadt didn't believe that Mike was really getting anything good because Eisenstadt carried a light meter with him. And he measured the light in there and he goes, I'd be surprised if you were getting anything good. And Uncle Mike said, well, how about if we meet for a drink and I'll show you what I got day after tomorrow. And Eisenstadt was in town for Truman's daughter's wedding. So they met at the Hotel Muehlbach. And Uncle Mike showed him contact sheets, the negatives, and Eisenstadt was duly impressed. He says, I can't believe it. And he goes, I didn't really notice that there was a strobe going off in there. And Mike goes, yeah, it's a strobe I got from Macy's. And but Uncle Mike was recommended to not go into photography because he had a wife and 2 children and another one on the way. So Mike did not go into photography. And Mert and I were talking about this. She said earlier, I wonder why he quit earlier. Because I asked that same question to him many times. I go, how come you're still not shooting? And he says, I don't need to have a camera to shoot. He says, when I'm driving, I see something, I visualize it, and I'm shooting all the time. And he goes, I just don't have to carry any gear with me any longer. And I knew what he was talking about because there are times when I do that as well.
He started mentoring then.
Mentoring?
Yeah.
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 He had a class, of men from the Kansas City Camera Club that started meeting with him at our place, actually, once a month, like 5 years. And when they first started, they were not that good, but when they finished, they were amazing, and they were winning all of the awards at the annual photo exhibit, every year.
Right.
They were great. And then, of course, you and Dan both,
Yeah, we were.
So this became important to him.
Yeah.
This was satisfied him.
Well, he was a great teacher for me because he never taught me technique. What he taught me was theory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he would never tell me how to set things up. He would only tell me theory. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But he was a good teacher.
He was a good teacher.
And he did say one thing about a student's work. He said their first roll of film, I can tell whether they have an eye or if they don't. He says, you can't teach an eye. He said, you're either born with that, and he says, here's what he would do, the ones that didn't have an eye that wanted to get into photography. He said, I tried to steer them into a technical part of photography because I knew aesthetically that they could never make it. So that's Johto, the dog, and this is Benton going back after lunch. But Benton had this amazing work ethic, and he could just work day after day after day, and I think that that's why he was so successful, was the amount of hours he could put into these paintings, and he was so diligent about it. I really grew to respect him.
Enjoyed it.
And that's Rita by the window, holding a match, once again, not too far away from her passion. So now, why don't you talk briefly about the dinner that you had over there with the Bentons, Mert? Tell us about that.
We invited them to come to our place for a Greek dinner, Mike did. And they said, now we're at that age where, we just don't go out at night. Why doesn't Mert come on over here and we can fix dinner over here, And so that's what I ended up doing. And so we had a great evening. It was fun. I fixed a Greek dish, chicken kapama, and
Chicken kapama.
Chicken kapama, yeah. And we just had a real great time. It was a fun evening, yeah. Fun. They were just a lot of fun.
That's
they really
amazing
were.
that you got to go have dinner with Tom and Rita Benton.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So a little sidebar
They
thing.
were just great people. They were fun, yeah.
The exhibit downstairs that the library has, they have a guest book, and this woman signed it. She said, beautiful photographs with her name, her address, and she put on there, I want the recipe to chicken kapama with an exclamation mark. And so what do? I take a picture of it. I send it to Aunt Mert on her phone, and then I call her later in the day, and she goes, I already dropped her the recipe in the mail. And I go, oh my God. So that woman probably got it.
It's a good one, it really is.
Probably got it today.
Yeah.
That's, so who's this, Mert? That's you.
Yeah, I know. 8 months pregnant,
8 months pregnant.
yeah.
So
Fixing dinner.
you're in charge of fixing dinner and you're 8 months pregnant and you had to haul everything over there, huh?
I was young.
Yeah, it was young. Oh my gosh.
It was fun. I had fun. I always have fun when I'm cooking.
Well, you look so beautiful there. And you were carrying your youngest son, George.
George, yeah.
Yeah, George Mardikes, who
Yeah.
went on to become an attorney.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about
Oh,
this.
this is the one I love, yeah.
Tell us about this.
Yeah, I'm just so fascinated that we have, all of this going on. We're seeing it from this perspective, and then we're looking and seeing in the mirror, the opposite. I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
The way he did that.
The geometry that you can see
Yeah.
the boy's expression, you can see the back of Benton's
Oh.
head, and then the mother approval. It's just fantastic. And Uncle Mike said that Benton was paid $25 for doing this portrait.
Yeah, all right.
So this is at the River Club unveiling. And once again, Mike's strobe wasn't working. So these are all available light. He was hand holding these. I asked him about that specifically. And I go, what about this one? This looks like it has strobe. Now this is gonna really blow your mind. He goes, there was a Kansas City Star photographer there, and he was standing to my left over here. And he said, I put the camera on bulb, which means when you press the shutter, it opens it up and remains open as long as your finger is on the shutter. And he says, I waited for the strobe to go off. And as soon as the Kansas City Star photographer's strobe went off, I closed it down. And I go, well, that explains what, oops, sorry. I said, that explains why there's a tiny bit of movement in the lights, because you can see the camera burning those in while it's waiting for the strobe. And I go, Mike, once again, brilliant. So he was dogging the Kansas City Stars. There's Mike. This was the only image without the camera in front of his face where it showed his face. And then this was on his birthday when he turned 94 in March of 2021. And I went over there and took this picture of Mert and Mike. So I have to tell you, I hear a weird feedback back there. What's going on?
We're going to find out.
Okay, thank you. We were in a panic because I really wanted to get this exhibit up while my Uncle Mike was still around. And we were worried about his health. He was 94 and his mind was 100% there. He could answer any question. All these memories were embedded. Really had it all together. And so when I talked to the library, I told them how important it was that we try to put this on. And here it is during COVID. And they were just terrific to work with. We got it done. And we got them all printed. We got them framed. We got them hung. And we owe a great debt to the Central Library and the team down here. Thank you very much for that. And Mike got to see the exhibit. He came down with a wheelchair, and Kathy, his daughter, was here, and Tom and all the relatives. And 2 o'clock on Saturday, November 20th, we all showed up in force with masks on, and then got to show him the exhibit.
There he is.
So there's our thanks. And there's Mike, a picture of him a little bit earlier, which I recently did. That looks like me now. So, hey, why don't we open it up for some questions? I think some questions would really help us spur some more things to talk about with Myrtia.
If anybody does have questions, if you would, please use the microphone so the people watching at home can hear the question as well as the answer.
So do you have any of his pictures in your house? Did you get any artwork from the masters?
Actually, we have, 2 or 3, not a lot, We have a copy of the photograph that won the Popular Photography Second Prize Contest back in 1955. And then there's one of a goat in Greece, up on a hill looking at him, and it's one of my favorites, So.
But it's the best picture of a goat I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really great.
I gotta tell you.
It's great, yeah.
So did you have any of Mike's photographs from that adventure hanging in your house, or were they just all in a box for 40 years?
Oh, you mean the Benton? They had none of them hanging in the house. None of them hanging in the house.
Not a one.
Not a one, Yeah.
They were all.
He was kind of when he finished with something, he was finished with it, and it was on to other things. And we didn't do it. Yeah.
No, I was curious about that too, Mike. That's a really good question. And Uncle Mike, when we started making test prints, because we wanted to make sure that I processed all of these and made them look like his work. And when you're in Lightroom or Photoshop, you can adjust them. And he always had this really strong black, beautiful black shade in his shot. It was kind of his signature. And so we made test prints, and then we showed them to him, and he goes, "Wow, you guys hit it dead on." And so we had learned from him how to make them look like that. Yes, please. Another question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I was curious how Mike and Benton initially connected and how he was able to gain access to the session.
How they met?
Yes.
Yes. Mike's was at the Art Institute after he left the photo school in Fort Monmouth, the Army Photo School. That's where when he got out of the service, that's where he went and picked up photography. He wanted to start. And when he finished that, he came to Kansas City and enrolled at the Kansas City Art Institute and took photography there. He wanted to get the other side of photography, and so his instructor there was Gene Pyle. Gene Pyle was a former student of Benton's. And so through Gene, he met Thomas, Hart Benton. And I think Gene was actually, this was in, I think, maybe 1955, that Gene was visiting with us. And he took Mike over to meet Benton at that time. And so that's how they sort of got together. And the strange thing is personalities jived. They really enjoyed one another. They really did.
I actually got to meet Gene Pyle.
Yeah.
He brought him down to my first studio, and I got to see some of his work.
Oh, he was
But
amazing.
Equally important, Myrtia was going to the Art Institute at that time, and that's when they fell in love. So they met at the Art Institute. Pyle introduced Uncle Mike to Tom Benton, and remember he called the dribbler? It was simply
Pollock.
Jackson Pollock was the
Jackson
dribbler.
Pollock, yeah.
Do we have another question?
Curious about the photograph where he was eating a bowl of cereal, it looked like, and there was a bottle of Burgundy sitting next to him. What's the story behind that?
What's interesting about that photograph, Bruce, is Benton was eating lunch in that photograph, and he's actually eating with his left hand. And it kind of shocked me when I saw it, because then I immediately went to see some of the painting shots, and he was painting with his right hand. And Dan and I knew that the negative wasn't flopped because of the bottle of Burgundy. I think it was Burgundy.
You could read it.
You could read it. And so we knew that he was eating with his left hand. So he was either eating with his left hand to rest his right hand, or he was ambidextrous. But the composition worked better. And I did ask my Uncle Mike, I said, did you coax him into switching hands to make it work for the composition? And he goes, there was no coaxing Tom. So that's what I know about that shot.
I'd heard he had always sold a lot of his paintings when he needed the money, to his friends and everything. Is that true?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Steve, is that?
He says yes, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So the answer, yes, he did sell his paintings to his friends when he needed money.
Yeah.
As all photographers do, too.
Yeah.
We all have to buy groceries, don't we? Yes, sir.
So there's 32 photos in the exhibit?
I believe there's 32 plus the color one of,
So I'm just curious, of all the 1,000 photographs, what criteria did you use to select those 32?
that's a great question. The criteria was, we wanted to be able to tell a story. Mike Mardikes, instead of using direct on-camera flash that a lot of photographers did back in the 50s, Uncle Mike liked the kind of photographs that were in Life magazine, National Geographic, things that looked like they were real, the way things are actually in the room, the way the light works in the room. And so we wanted to tell a story because he was telling a story. And we figured we needed to have some earlier on in the painting so that it showed the development of it. We wanted process shots. We wanted the color test so that, once again, when you're looking through them as a body of work, you can understand what was going on while he was painting the River Club painting. And then we wanted to end it with the reveal when Tom Benton goes up to make the speech. And I think what's important to tell him is Myrt gives me a call one day and says, I'm getting ready to do my taxes, and tell him what you found.
Well, it was a sheet, typewritten sheet, and it was Benton's speech that he gave at the River Club that night. And, you know, it was funny because, I mean, he had, it was all typed, but over here at the side, I mean, where it said, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, you know, and then he had written in a pencil, and Mike Mardikes, you know, and then at the very, very end, he signed his name to it, you know, and gave it to Mike. So it was there.
So I have that in my possession, and we went ahead and photographed it so that we have it archived. Someday we want to make sure it goes to the right place.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't belong at my place or at your place.
Yeah, right.
But then we found a couple letters. Let's tell them about that. You called me up another day, and you were going.
What is that?
You were going through the file, and you
Yeah?
found 13 questions that Uncle Mike asked Tom Benton. He wrote him a letter.
Oh,
Remember that?
yeah, no, what did I do with those? What did I do with those?
I'll tell this story.
Did you keep it?
I have.
You gave it back to me?
No, I have those.
Okay, because I can't,
I have
all
those.
right, tell the story.
Oh, now I'm in trouble. It's okay.
That's all right.
So she calls me up and says, as far as questions about the River Club painting, I found a letter from Uncle Mike, and it's 13 questions where he asks pointed questions. And I remember saying, well, darn, I wish we had Benton's letter where he answered all those. And she goes, I have that too. And then once I said, I'm on my way. And I went over there and drove over there and picked him up. And I looked at the dates, and I can't remember the exact month, but he sent it to Tom Benton on, let's say, April 3rd. And then Benton's letter to Uncle Mike was dated April 6th. I couldn't believe all the way from, what was the town he lived in? Benton.
In the vineyard?
In the vineyard. That's where he had written the letter to him. But he answered all 13 of these questions pretty much. I think he hedged on a few of them. But more importantly, her son Tom texts me that day and says, there's a guy in town, Ethan Starr, who's in town from Columbia University or college, and he's doing his thesis on the River Club painting. Is there any way you could meet with him? And I go, what? There's somebody writing his thesis on this painting that we have all these photographs? So I call the guy right then, and he goes, I'll be in town either today or tomorrow. Can I come see you? I have to fly back out. And I said, of course, come now. And so he came over, and I let him read these letters, and then I ended up giving him copies of the letters, and he wrote the paper more informed about that painting from these letters that Myrt found.
Yeah.
Once again, the saver. But it doesn't do any good to save anything unless you can retrieve it.
Yeah.
And you've always been a good saver.
I keep finding things all the time.
Audience question real quick. Can I jump in with an online question real quick?
Sure.
Somebody wants to know, other than these photos, where would they be most likely to have seen Michael's work? And then I think probably time for what, you think 2 or 3 more, you think?
Sure. Well,
No.
I believe it was a 1955 issue of Popular Photography. And Popular Photography used to be a really big publication. Over the years, like in the 80s and the 90s, it kind of started to dwindle and go down, but it used to be sort of one of the Bibles of photography. And So I went to eBay and I found that exact issue, and I bought it, and it was less than $20. I couldn't believe it. And here's Uncle Mike's work in this 1955 popular photography contest. And I think it was the annual contest. But he had 4 or 5 of his photographs
I
in
think
there.
it was 4. Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, one of them. I think it was 5 that he actually won prizes for, but I don't think they had the 5th one in there.
And then he entered a contest for, was it Life magazine?
Life magazine, yeah.
Tell him about that, please.
Yeah, this was a photo essay contest, and he decided to go to a monastery in Ava, Missouri. I think it was Trappist. And he went down and shot a photo essay of the Trappist monks down there, and entered that. And actually, that one won honorable mention.
Yeah, honorable mention in Life magazine.
Life magazine, yeah.
So I also understand that Uncle Mike was sending film back to you, right?
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
what did he ask you to do with that film?
I developed the film.
So Myrt was developing his film.
This stunned Nick when I told him.
I was like, what? I would never trust my wife to develop my film. Nor would she trust me to help her on her project. But Myrt has an amazing alchemy in her. She's a legendary cook.
It turned out real well.
Time and temperature.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also had a good friend that has started a small little magazine, sort of a this month in Kansas City.
This month.
Back in 1964, 65. And when we came back from our trip to Greece, our year and a half there, back in 1965, Mike just started doing a photo essay for him each month for the magazine, just to promote it. And
for Alex Pappas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alex Pappas, yeah.
And see, he did that for a year or more, photographed all kinds of people here in Kansas City. The head of the Philharmonic, Kansas City Chiefs, he went there. He did the Chiefs. Actually, that's where he met Mike Garrett, and they became really good friends.
Yeah, I met Mike Garrett, the football player for
yeah.
the Chiefs, through Uncle Mike.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there were so many different. Dwayne and Nancy Benton, that had did creative, candles, started creative candles. They were just going into business at that time. Did a great photo essay on them. And there was probably at least a year and a half or 2 years where he was doing one once a month. And those are really great photographs.
Well, let's take another question. Was there one more?
I think it was interesting that the River Club had a fire and that painting was damaged. And Benton, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there are photos of Benton. He restored it right there in the River Club. He didn't take it back to the studio.
Isn't that amazing?
He did it right there.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I don't know that there was a fire there, I could be wrong, I think, because it hung above the fireplace, and so it definitely got some
No, there
smoke
were,
damage.
there was a fire.
And yeah, Tom went back in 1971 to touch it up.
I was just wondering if Mike had
That's great.
photographed him restoring that painting there. So obviously not.
So the painting probably had smoke damage, and in 1971, Benton touched it up. I'm just repeating that for the at-home audience. So is there anything that you can wrap it up with? Mike was working nights at the Ford plant while he was doing this photo essay, and then during the day he would go over to Tom and Rita's and photograph. And then when did he come home?
Well, he came home and slept. That was about it at the time. But got a lot done. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you were holding down the fort with 2 small kids and another one.
Yeah.
I know. She
No
makes
problem.
it sound like it's no big deal.
No problem.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it was fun. Great times.
Well, Aunt Mert, this has been amazing for me to make this full circle on this piece with you.
Yeah, I can't believe the work you've done, a year and a half on all of this. It's amazing. Amazing.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. Well, thanks. Come up and look at these. You're not welcome to come up and put them in your pocket.
He bought the Nikon after he won the popular photography prize.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you for having us.